Commander stared at the screen in front of him. His 4 eyes blinked twice, then 3 times more. The image did not change. A human battleship was crossing into space, alone. This was wrong. Humans never traveled alone. Never, in 3 years of watching the border between their territories, had learned this simple truth. Humans moved in groups. They protected each other. They surrounded their ships with escorts and support vessels. Yet here was the USS Valiant, one of humanity's largest battleships, crossing the border with nothing around it. "Scan again," ordered. His voice came out steady despite the cold feeling in his chest. "Check for cloaked vessels." The junior officer at the scanning station worked quickly. Her claws tapped against the controls. "Nothing, Commander. The scans show empty space. The human ship is completely alone." Stood up from his command chair. The monitoring station was small, built into an asteroid at the edge of territory. 12 officers worked here, watching for threats. In 3 years, they had never seen anything like this. "Send an alert to Fleet Command," said. "Mark it as Priority 1. Tell them a human battleship has violated our border." The communications officer nodded. His fingers moved across his station. "Message sent, Commander." Looked back at the screen. The USS Valiant continued forward. It was moving fast, faster than intelligence reports said human ships could move. The battleship's engines burned bright against the darkness of space. "Sir, we're receiving a response from Admiral Eth," the communications officer said. "He wants a direct link." "Put him through." The screen changed. Admiral Eth's face appeared. The Admiral was old his scales faded to a pale gray, but his eyes were sharp and angry. "What am I looking at, Commander?" Eth demanded. "A human battleship, sir. Alone. It crossed our border 7 minutes ago." "Humans don't travel alone." "I know, sir." Eth was quiet for a moment, could see the Admiral thinking. "This is a trap. It must be. They want us to chase this ship while their real fleet attacks somewhere else." "Perhaps, sir, but our sensors show nothing. No other ships. No fleet movements near any of our borders." "Then it's a reconnaissance mission. They're testing our response times." Eth leaned closer to his screen. "Have you tried to communicate with them?" "Yes, sir, 3 times. They ignore all messages." Eth made a low, growling sound. "I'm mobilizing the 3rd Fleet. We'll intercept this ship before it gets deeper into our territory. Continue monitoring. If you detect any other human ships, alert me immediately." The screen went dark, sat back down. He felt uneasy. Something about this situation felt wrong. Humans were careful. They planned everything. They didn't make mistakes like this. "Commander," the scanning officer called. "The human ship just increased speed. It's moving even faster now." "Track its course. Where is it going?" The officer worked at her station. After a moment, she looked up. "If it maintains this heading, it will pass through the sector." Felt his blood run cold. The sector held 7 mining colonies. Thousands of civilians lived there. If the humans were planning an attack on civilians, it would mean war. Real war, not just the tense peace they had now. Aboard the USS Valiant, Captain Daniel Carter sat in his command chair. He could feel the vibration through the floor as the engines pushed harder. The ship was moving at maximum speed, maybe even a bit beyond what was safe. "Status report," Carter said. His first officer, Lisa Morgan, checked her displays. "We're maintaining speed. Engines are at 105%. Says we can hold this for 6 more hours before we need to reduce power." Carter nodded. Brooks, their chief engineer, knew the ship better than anyone. If he said 6 hours, then they had 6 hours. "Any response from the?" Carter asked. "Nothing on communication channels, sir, but our sensors show fleet movements. They're scrambling ships to intercept us." "Expected." Carter looked at the main screen. Space stretched out before them, filled with stars. Somewhere ahead, people were dying, people, the enemy, but they were dying anyway, and the Valiant had the equipment to save them. "Sir," Morgan said quietly. She moved closer to his chair. "We're going to start a war." "Maybe," Carter replied, "or maybe we'll end one." Morgan didn't look convinced, but she nodded. She trusted him. The whole crew trusted him. Carter hoped that trust wasn't misplaced. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. "It's from Fleet Command, Admiral Eth." "Ignore it," Carter said. "Sir, we don't have time for negotiations. Every minute we spend talking is another minute those people don't have." The officer hesitated, then nodded. "Understood, sir." Carter stood up. He walked to the main screen and stared at the stars. 3 years ago, a patrol had fired on a human cargo ship near a disputed border region. 2 crew members died. The tensions between humanity and the Empire had exploded. Both sides sent fleets to their borders. Both sides prepared for war. But the war never came. Instead, they watched each other. They waited. They built more ships and trained more soldiers. The tension grew and grew like a rope being pulled, and now Carter was crossing into enemy territory. Alone, he had volunteered for this. When Earth Command received the distress signal from the colony, most admirals wanted to ignore it, let them save their own people. But Carter had looked at the numbers. The Valiant was the closest ship with the right equipment. They could save those people. People, yes, but people nonetheless. Earth Command had argued for 2 hours. Finally, they gave permission. But they couldn't send escorts. Any fleet movement would trigger a response. The only way this would work was if one ship moved fast and alone. "How long until we reach the colony?" Carter asked. Morgan checked her station. 4 hours and 17 minutes at current speed. "And how long until the fleet intercepts us?" 3 hours and 40 minutes. Carter allowed himself a small smile. "Then we need to go faster." "Sir, the engines." "I know. Ask if he can give me 110%. Morgan looked worried, but she sent the message. A moment later, the reply came back. On the small screen's face appeared. The chief engineer was covered in grease and sweat. "Captain, if I push the engines to 110%, there's a 30% chance they'll fail completely." "And if they fail?" Carter asked. "We'll be dead in space. Easy target for the fleet." Carter thought for a moment. "Do it anyway." Grinned. "Thought you'd say that. Already making the adjustments. You'll have your speed in 2 minutes." The screen went dark. Carter returned to his chair. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. They knew what was at stake. They knew they might die today, but they also knew that 15,000 civilians would die for certain if they didn't try. The ship vibrated harder as the engines increased power. Carter felt it through his boots, through his chair. The Valiant was screaming through space now, pushing past every safety limit. "New course projection," Morgan reported. "We'll reach the colony before the fleet intercepts us, but only by 13 minutes. 13 minutes, Carter repeated. "We'll make it work." Far behind them, Admiral Ed's fleet was accelerating hard. 20 warships, all moving to intercept one human vessel. Ed stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display. "They're increasing speed again," his tactical officer reported. "Our intelligence reports were wrong about human engine capabilities." Clearly, Ed growled. He studied the display. The human ship was still alone, still heading deeper into space. "Any communication?" "None, sir. They ignore all our messages." The USS Valiant shook as another blast hit its rear shields. Captain Daniel Carter gripped his armrest but kept his voice calm. "Shield status." "Rear shields at 72%, Lisa Morgan reported. She worked quickly at her station, fingers moving across the controls. "They're using focused particle beams, not enough to break through yet, but they're persistent." Carter nodded. The fleet had caught up faster than expected. Now 20 warships flew behind them, firing carefully aimed shots. They were trying to disable the Valiant, not destroy it. That was good. It meant they were curious, not murderous. Yet. "Return fire?" the weapons officer asked. Lieutenant Peter Grant sat at the weapons station, his hands hovering over the firing controls. "No," Carter said firmly. "We fire back and this becomes a battle. We don't have time for a battle." "Sir, we could destroy half their fleet before they got close enough to." "I said no, Lieutenant." Grant pulled his hands back. He looked frustrated, but he obeyed. Around the bridge, other crew members exchanged glances. They were being shot at. Every instinct told them to shoot back. But their captain said no, so they didn't. Another blast rocked the ship. This one was stronger. "Shields at 68%, Morgan said. "Captain, they're adjusting their weapons, getting more accurate." "Time to the colony." 2 hours and 9 minutes. Carter did the math in his head. 2 hours of taking fire. The shields would hold, probably, but probably wasn't good enough. "Contact engineering. Ask if he can reinforce the rear shields." Morgan sent the message. The reply came back quickly. "He says he can redirect power from the forward shields. It'll leave our front vulnerable, but our rear shields will strengthen to 85%. Do it. The ship's systems adjusted. Carter felt a slight change in the vibration pattern. The Valiant was taking a beating, but she was holding together. Aboard Admiral Eth's flagship, the mood was tense. The Admiral stood at the center of the bridge, watching his tactical display. His fleet surrounded the human ship, firing continuously, yet the battleship kept moving forward. It didn't slow down, it didn't return fire, it just absorbed the damage and continued. "Their shields are strong," the tactical officer said. "Stronger than our intelligence predicted." "Everything about this ship is stronger than predicted," Eth muttered. He studied the human vessel. It was beautiful in a way, sleek and powerful, human engineering at its finest. "Why won't they shoot back?" "Unknown, sir. They have full weapons capability. Our sensors detect active weapon systems, but they're not firing." Eth made a frustrated sound. This made no sense. Humans were fighters. When attacked, they fought back, always. He had seen the battle reports from 3 years ago. Human ships fought fiercely even when outnumbered. They never just ran. "Increase fire intensity," Eth ordered. "Target their engines. I want that ship stopped." His fleet responded. The particle beams grew brighter, more focused. They hammered against the Valiant's rear shields, searching for weak points. On the Valiant, alarms began to sound. "Shields at 60%, Morgan called out. "They're targeting the engine section specifically now." Carter leaned forward in his chair. "I need those engines." The chief engineer's voice came through the speakers. "Working on it, Captain, but if they keep hitting the same spot, the shields will fail. Maybe 40 minutes before we have a problem." 40 minutes. Carter looked at the countdown on his screen. 1 hour and 53 minutes to the colony. They wouldn't make it. "Lisa, plot a new course, something that makes us harder to hit." "Sir, any course change will slow us down." "I know, but we won't make it at all if they destroy our engines." Morgan worked quickly. "I can plot a spiral pattern. We'll weave while maintaining most of our forward speed. It'll add 8 minutes to our travel time." "Do it." The Valiant suddenly curved to the left, then right, then left again. The movement was smooth but unexpected. Behind them, the fleet struggled to adjust their aim. Several beams missed completely. Others hit at angles, reducing their effectiveness. "Clever," Eth said, watching the human ship dance through space. "Very clever." He turned to his navigation officer. "Match their pattern, stay with them." The fleet adjusted. They followed the Valiant's weaving path, maintaining their fire. But the new pattern made targeting much harder. Their accuracy dropped significantly. "Shields stabilizing at 58%, Morgan reported. "The spiral is working." Carter allowed himself to breathe, but he knew this was temporary. Eventually, they would adapt. They always did. Deep in the Valiant's engine room, Brooks worked like a man possessed. Sweat dripped down his face. Around him, his engineering team moved quickly, making adjustments, reinforcing systems, keeping everything running beyond its designed limits. "How's the coolant flow?" called out. "Stable," his assistant replied. "But we're cycling it twice as fast as normal. The heat exchangers won't last forever at this rate." "They don't need to last forever, just another 2 hours." An explosion somewhere behind them made everyone jump. Ran to check the source. A minor coolant leak, already being sealed by automatic systems. He grabbed a repair tool and helped anyway. "Boss, the engines are at their absolute limit," his assistant said. 110% if we push any harder." "We don't push harder," interrupted. "We just maintain, keep everything balanced, watch for fluctuations." The assistant nodded. Around them, the engines roared. The sound was almost painful, a constant scream of metal and energy, but they held. They kept pushing the ship forward. Wiped his face and looked at the engine readouts. The numbers were all in the red. Everything was beyond safe limits, but the engines were running. That's what mattered. On the bridge, Carter received a new communication alert. "Sir, it's Admiral Eth again. He's demanding we respond." "Still no answer," Carter said. "Captain," Morgan said quietly, "maybe we should talk to them, tell them why we're here." Carter shook his head. "If we tell them, they'll tell us to turn back. They'll say they can handle it themselves, and while we argue, people die." "But if they understood—" "They won't understand, not yet, maybe later, but not now." Carter looked at her. "I know this is hard, Lisa, but we have to see this through." Morgan looked like she wanted to argue more, but she nodded. "Yes, sir." Another blast hit the shields, then another. They were getting better at tracking the spiral pattern. "Shields at 52%, Morgan reported. Carter checked his screen. Still over an hour to go. The shields wouldn't last. He needed another option. "Peter," he said to the weapons officer, "fire a spread of warning shots, not at their ships, just in front of them. Make it look aggressive." Grant looked surprised. "Sir." "Do it. I want them to think we're about to fight back." Grant smiled. He understood. His hands moved across the controls. 6 energy beams lanced out from the Valiant, passing well ahead of the nearest ships but close enough to look threatening. On Ed's flagship, alarms blared. "Incoming fire," the tactical officer shouted. "Evasive action," Ed ordered. The fleet scattered, ships breaking formation to avoid what they thought was an attack. The beams passed harmlessly through empty space, but the fleet's formation was broken. Ed quickly realized what happened. "They didn't aim at us, they fired warning shots." He laughed, a harsh barking sound. "The humans are clever, reform the fleet, but give them more distance. They might actually shoot next time." His ships pulled back slightly, maintaining pursuit, but with more caution. The distance between them and the Valiant increased by several kilometers. On the Valiant, Carter watched the fleet fall back. "That bought us some time, maybe 20 minutes of lighter fire." "Sir, look at this," Morgan said. She pointed to her screen. "I'm detecting a communication burst from the fleet, not directed at us. Internal communication." "Can we decode it?" "Already working on it. Our translation software is good, but military codes are tough." She worked at her station. "Got something, it's partial. They're saying something about checking border reports, looking for recent events." Carter felt a chill. They were investigating. Smart. Someone in the command was asking the right questions. How long before they figured out the truth? "Time to colony?" Carter asked. 57 minutes. Not fast enough. They needed to go faster. But the engines were already at maximum. The shields were failing, and the fleet was right behind them, firing and investigating. Carter made a decision. "Lisa, send a tight beam communication, just one word, the name of the colony, send it to the flagship." "Sir." "Do it, maybe it'll make them think." Morgan programmed the message. One word in language. The name of the colony they were racing toward. She sent it on a narrow beam directly to Admiral Ed's ship. Aboard the flagship, the communications officer looked confused. "Sir, we received a message from the human ship, just one word." "What word?" Ed asked. "Sir." Ed froze. "The colony sector." Why would the humans send that name? He looked at his tactical display, really looked at it. The human ship's course. It was heading directly toward the colonies. "Get me a status report on all colonies in the sector," Ed ordered. "Immediately." His officers worked quickly. Minutes passed. Then one officer looked up, his face pale. "Sir, 7, they sent a distress signal 8 hours ago. Reactor failure, critical situation." Ed felt understanding hit him like a physical blow. The human ship, alone, racing into enemy territory, refusing to fight back, now sending the colony name. "They're not attacking," Ed said slowly. "They're responding to the distress call." His bridge went silent. Every officer stared at him. "The humans intercepted our distress signal," Ed continued, "and they sent a rescue ship." "But sir," the tactical officer said, "they're humans, they're our enemy." "Apparently not today," Ed replied. He looked at the human battleship on his screen, still taking fire from his fleet, still pushing forward. "Cease fire, all ships, cease fire immediately." His fleet stopped shooting. The particle beams stopped. The Valiant continued forward, now unimpeded. Eth opened a communication channel. "Human vessel Valiant, this is Admiral Eth of the Imperial Fleet. We understand your mission. We will escort you to 7. 7 came into view on the main screen. The mining colony clung to the surface of a dead moon, a collection of domed structures connected by enclosed tunnels. From space, it should have been brightly lit. Instead, half the domes were dark. Emergency lights flickered in others. "Radiation readings are through the roof," Lisa Morgan reported. Her voice was tight with worry. "The reactor is in full meltdown. At this rate, the containment will fail completely in 37 minutes. Captain Daniel Carter stood up. "How many people?" 15,218, Morgan said. "According to their population records, most are in the northern shelters. but those shelters weren't built for radiation protection. Carter turned to his crew. Everyone knows their jobs. Get your team ready. Peter, you're going with them. Lisa, you have the bridge. Sir, you're going down there? Morgan asked. I'm not sending my people into danger while I sit up here safe. Carter headed toward the elevator. Contact the colony. Tell them we're here to help. Morgan opened a communication channel. 7, this is the USS Valiant. We're here to assist with your reactor emergency. Please respond. Static crackled, then a voice, weak and frightened. This is Colony Administrator Al. Who is this? Your accent. You're human. Yes, Administrator. We intercepted your distress signal. We have radiation containment equipment and experienced engineers. Permission to dock. A long pause. You're humans. We're at war. This must be a trick. We're not at war today, Morgan said firmly. And this isn't a trick. Your reactor is failing. We can help, but we need your permission to dock. Another pause. Why would you help us? Because people are dying, Morgan said simply. Does it matter who's helping as long as someone helps? The administrator didn't answer for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was shaking. Docking Bay 3, it's the closest to the reactor. Please hurry. The Valiant moved into position. Behind them, Admiral Ed's fleet formed a protective perimeter. The Admiral had stopped chasing and started helping. His ships provided extra power to the colony's failing systems. It wasn't much, but every bit helped. In the Valiant's engineering section, Brooks checked his equipment. He wore a heavy radiation suit, the kind designed for the worst possible scenarios. Around him, his team did the same. 12 engineers, all volunteers, all knowing the danger. Remember, said, we work in pairs. Nobody goes anywhere alone. We have 40 minutes of protection in these suits. After that, the radiation will start breaking through. We need to stabilize the reactor core, seal the primary breach, and activate the backup containment. Simple. Simple, one engineer muttered. Right. Smiled despite the fear in his gut. Okay, not simple, but we can do this. We've trained for situations like this. We trained for human reactors, another engineer said. This is technology. Reactors are reactors, the basics are the same. Fuel, control rods, coolant, containment. Different languages, same physics. Captain Carter entered the room, wearing his own radiation suit. Everyone ready. As ready as we'll get, sir, replied. Good, let's go save some lives. The team moved to the docking bay. The Valiant connected with the colony's docking port. Air pressure equalized. The door opened. On the other side, Colony Administrator Al waited. He was old, his scales faded and cracked. Behind him stood a dozen civilians, all wearing emergency radiation gear that looked old and poorly maintained. You actually came, Al said, staring at the humans. We said we would, Carter replied. Where's the reactor? Follow me, but please hurry, the children. His voice broke. We moved them to the deepest shelters, but the radiation is seeping through. The youngest ones are already showing signs of exposure. Carter felt cold fury at that. Children were suffering. That's all that mattered, not politics, not borders, not old grudges, just children in danger. The group moved quickly through the colony's tunnels. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows. The walls shook periodically as small explosions echoed from the reactor area. What caused the meltdown? Asked as they walked. Old equipment, Al said bitterly. We requested replacement parts 6 months ago. The Empire said they would send them. They never did. Then 3 days ago, the primary coolant system failed. We tried to shut down the reactor, but the control rods jammed. Now the fuel is overheating, the core is melting, and we can't stop it. They reached the reactor chamber. The doors were sealed, but radiation warnings covered every surface. The readings on suit display jumped to dangerous levels even outside the chamber. We'll need to go in there, said, looking at the sealed doors. We evacuated everyone 2 hours ago, Al explained. When the radiation got too high, 3 of our engineers were still trying to fix it. He stopped. They didn't make it out. Closed his eyes briefly. 3 engineers had died trying to save their people. He wouldn't let their sacrifice be meaningless. Open the doors, said. We're going in. The doors slid open. Heat and radiation poured out. The interior of the reactor chamber glowed with an evil yellow-green light. Alarms screamed. Coolant leaked from broken pipes, creating pools of dangerous liquid on the floor. And his team entered. Captain Carter stayed with them, carrying equipment. The doors sealed behind them, protecting those outside from the radiation. "Okay," said, studying the reactor. "It's worse than I thought. The fuel rods are completely exposed. The coolant system is shot, and the containment vessel has multiple cracks." "Can we fix it?" Carter asked. "We can try," pointed to his team. "Group 1, work on rerouting coolant from the backup system. Group 2, I need you to lower those control rods manually. They're jammed, so you'll have to force them. Captain, you and I are going to seal those containment cracks." Everyone moved. They worked with desperate speed, knowing every second counted. The radiation levels were killing them slowly. The suits provided protection, but not forever. And Carter approached the containment vessel. The cracks were visible, glowing hot. They pulled out specialized repair equipment designed to seal metal at extremely high temperatures. "This is going to be delicate," said. "One wrong move and we could trigger a bigger breach." "Then we won't make a wrong move," Carter replied. They worked together, applying sealant to the cracks. The heat was incredible even through the suits. Sweat poured down their faces. Their hands shook from the strain. Across the chamber, the other teams worked on their tasks. Engineers forced the jammed control rods down, fighting against warped metal and failed mechanisms. Others reconnected coolant lines, using human equipment to bridge gaps in the systems. "How are we doing on time?" Carter asked. Checked his suit display. "We've been in here 18 minutes. Reactor core temperature is still climbing. We're losing this fight." "Then we fight harder." But even as he said it, Carter knew they needed more help. The damage was too extensive. Too many systems had failed. There were 12 people trying to fix what should require 50. Outside the reactor chamber, Al paced nervously. Beside him, Admiral Eth had arrived. The Admiral had transported down from his flagship, wanting to see the situation himself. "How long have the humans been in there?" Eth asked. 20 minutes, Al replied. "Nobody has come out." "Because they're still fighting," Eth said quietly. He looked at the radiation readings on the wall display. "No one should survive in those conditions, even with protection suits." "Yet they're in there," Al said. "Humans are enemies fighting to save us." Eth thought about that. For 3 years, he had prepared to fight humans. He had studied their tactics, their weapons, their strategies. He had learned to respect their military capabilities, but he had never truly understood them until now. "Open a communication channel," Eth said. "I want to talk to Captain Carter." Inside the reactor chamber, Carter heard the communication alert. He answered without stopping his work. "Carter here." "Captain, this is Admiral Eth. What's your situation?" "Not good, Admiral. We're making progress, but it's slow. The damage is extensive." "What do you need?" Carter paused. Was the Admiral really offering to help? "We need more hands, more engineers. The work is too much for my team alone." "I have engineers aboard my ships. Good ones. Give me 5 minutes." The channel closed. Carter looked at. "Did that just happen?" "I think so," replied. "They are sending help." True to his word, Eth had engineers transported to the colony within minutes. 10 engineers arrived, wearing their own radiation suits. They looked uncertain, facing the humans. "We're here to help," one said in broken English. "Tell us what to do." Quickly assigned them tasks. The engineers joined the human teams, working side by side. They struggled at first, unused to working with humans, but desperation and shared purpose overcame awkwardness. "You connect that line," a human engineer told her, "then I'll seal it." They nodded. They worked together, human hands and claws both working toward the same goal. The control rods began to move, slowly, fighting every centimeter, but they moved. The coolant systems started flowing again, pumping fresh coolant into the superheated core. The containment cracks were sealed one by one. "Core temperature is dropping," reported. "Not fast, but it's dropping. We might actually do this." Then the alarms changed. A new warning blared through the chamber. "What's that?" Carter asked. Checked his display. His face went pale. "Secondary explosion. The backup containment is failing. If it goes, it'll trigger a chain reaction. The whole colony will be destroyed." "Where is it?" "Lower level, below us." Looked at the access hatch in the floor. "Someone has to go down there and manually seal it." "How long do we have?" "Maybe 5 minutes." Carter didn't hesitate. "I'll go." Sir, it's even worse down there. Your suit won't protect you. You'll take a lethal dose of radiation. Then I'll be quick. Carter grabbed his equipment. Keep working on the main reactor. If I don't come back, you finish this. Captain. But Carter was already climbing down the access hatch. The ladder led into darkness. The temperature increased with every step. The radiation readings on his suit display climbed into numbers he had never seen before. He reached the lower level. It was like entering hell. Everything glowed with radiation. The air shimmered with heat. The backup containment vessel sat in the center, cracks spreading across its surface like spider webs. Carter moved toward it, each step an effort. His suit's alarms screamed at him. The radiation was breaking through his protection. He could feel it, a sick warmth spreading through his body. He reached the containment vessel, applied the sealant. His hands shook. The work was delicate, requiring precision, but precision was hard when you were dying. Captain, get out of there, his voice crackled through the radio. Your suit readings are critical. Almost done, Carter replied. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, distant. He sealed the last crack. The containment vessel stabilized. The warnings stopped. He had done it. Carter tried to climb back up the ladder. His legs wouldn't work properly. The radiation had done too much damage. He fell, hitting the ground hard. Above him saw Carter's suit readings flatline. No, 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 no. He ran to the access hatch. I need help. The captain is down. The combined human and team rushed to help. They pulled Carter up from the lower level, carrying him gently. His suit was so contaminated it glowed faintly. They carried him out of the reactor chamber. Medical teams waited outside. They stripped away the contaminated suit and began emergency treatment. Admiral Eth watched silently. He had seen many brave warriors in his life, but he had never seen someone deliberately walk into death to save strangers, enemy strangers. Will he live? Eth asked the human medic. I don't know, the medic replied honestly. The radiation exposure was massive, but we'll fight for him. Inside the reactor chamber, the remaining teams finished their work. The medical bay aboard the USS Valiant was crowded. Human and patients filled every bed. Some had radiation sickness. Others had suffered burns or injuries during the crisis. The human medical team worked alongside doctors who had transported up from the colony. They shared equipment, knowledge, and desperate determination to save everyone they could. Lisa Morgan stood outside Captain Daniel Carter's room. Through the window, she could see him lying still, connected to machines that beeped steadily. His skin looked wrong, damaged by radiation. The doctors said his condition was critical but stable, whatever that meant. Admiral Eth walked up beside her. The officer stood quietly, also looking through the window. He saved 15,000 of my people, Eth said. People he had never met, people from a nation that has been his enemy. That's who he is, Morgan replied. He sees people, not enemies. I have fought many battles, Eth continued. I have seen warriors do brave things, but I have never seen anyone walk knowingly into death like that, for strangers. Morgan felt tears on her face. She wiped them away quickly. Will your empire punish him? He violated your territory. Eth was quiet for a long moment. No, I don't think we will. How can we punish someone who saved so many lives? He turned to face Morgan. But I must ask you something. Why did you come? Your captain knew the risks. He knew we might destroy his ship, yet he came anyway. Because it was right, Morgan said simply. Sometimes that's reason enough. In the colony below, Brooks worked with engineers to make permanent repairs to the reactor. The immediate crisis was over, but the system needed extensive rebuilding. Human and engineers worked side by side, sharing tools and techniques. Your equipment is strange, an engineer named said. He held up a human welding tool, examining it curiously. But effective, very effective. Different species, different tools, replied. He was exhausted, running on stimulants and willpower. But we're all trying to do the same thing, keep people safe. Nodded, he activated the welding tool, sealing a joint in the coolant system. I have heard stories about humans, that you are violent, that you love war, that you cannot be trusted. Laughed bitterly. Yeah, we heard stories about too, that you're ruthless, that you kill without mercy, that you eat prisoners. We don't eat prisoners, said, sounding offended. And we don't love war, replied. See, both sides believe lies. They worked in silence for a few minutes, then spoke again. I have 2 children. They were in the deepest shelter during the crisis. When the radiation started reaching them, I thought I would lose them, but your captain saved them. Your engineers saved them. I owe you a debt I can never repay. Felt something in his chest tighten. You don't owe us anything. We did what anyone should do. Not anyone would, said. Not everyone would risk themselves for strangers, for enemies. He paused in his work. I would like my children to meet you, to meet the humans who saved them, so they can see that the stories were wrong. Smiled, I'd like that. Aboard Admiral Eth's flagship, the Situation Room was filled with senior officers. They had been arguing for hours. News of the human rescue mission had spread throughout the Empire. Different factions had different opinions. We should thank them and send them home, one officer said. This changes nothing about our territorial disputes. It changes everything, another argued. They proved they can be trusted. They saved our people when they could have left them to die. Or it's a propaganda trick, a third officer said. Make themselves look noble so we lower our guard. Ed listened to all of them. Finally, he stood. The room fell silent. I was there, Ed said. I saw what happened. I saw human engineers working until they could barely stand. I saw their captain walk into certain death to save children. You can call it propaganda if you want. But propaganda doesn't save 15,000 lives. Courage does, honor does, compassion does. Sir, what are you saying? An officer asked. I'm saying that maybe we've been wrong about humans. Maybe they're not the enemy we thought they were. Ed looked around the room. I'm recommending to the Emperor that we open formal talks with the human government, not about surrender, not about territory, about cooperation, about making sure something like this never happens again because both our peoples are too busy helping each other to fight. The room erupted in discussion. Some officers agreed, others protested loudly, but Ed had made his position clear. In the Imperial Palace on the Emperor and received the report. He read it 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. A human ship had violated their territory, had been fired upon by their fleet, and instead of fighting back, had saved 15,000 civilians. The Emperor was old. He had ruled for 40 years. In that time, he had fought wars, made alliances, broken treaties. He thought he understood politics, but this situation confused him. His advisors stood before him, each offering different counsel. We must prosecute them for violating our borders, one advisor said. Otherwise, we look weak. We must honor them for saving our people, another argued. Otherwise, we look ungrateful. We must be cautious, a third said. This could be a trick. Emperor listened. Then he made a decision. Bring me Admiral Eth and arrange a communication with the human government. I want to speak with their leaders directly. Back on 7, the colony was slowly returning to normal. The shelters opened. Families reunited. Children who had been hiding in the dark emerged into light. They saw their homes still standing, saved by strangers who had no reason to help them. Administrator Al organized a gathering in the central dome. Thousands of civilians filled the space. At the front, the human crew of the Valiant stood alongside engineers and Admiral Eth's officers. 3 days ago, Al began, his voice amplified through speakers, we faced death. Our reactor failed. Our empire could not reach us in time. We accepted that we would die, then something impossible happened. Humans came not to attack us, not to conquer us, but to save us. The crowd was silent. Many civilians had never seen a human before. They stared at the crew members with curiosity and wonder. These humans risked their lives, Al continued. Their captain took a lethal dose of radiation to seal our reactor. Their engineers worked beside our own engineers, treating them as brothers. They asked nothing in return. They simply helped because help was needed. He turned to Face and the other crew members. On behalf of 15,000 grateful people, thank you. Thank you for showing us that enemies can become friends, that borders mean nothing when lives are at stake, that courage and compassion are universal. The crowd erupted in applause. It started slowly, then built to a roar. Civilians clapped, whistled, and cheered. Some were crying. Felt overwhelmed. He had never been good with crowds, but he stepped forward. We did what anyone should do. We saw people in danger and we helped. That's all. We hope that someday, if humans need help, maybe some of you will remember today and help us too. More applause. Children ran forward, offering flowers they had grown in the colony's gardens. They gave them to the human crew members, smiling shyly. One small child, barely old enough to walk, approached. She held up a single blue flower, knelt down and took it gently. "Thank you," he said. The child smiled and ran back to her parents. Later, as the celebration continued, Admiral Eth found standing alone, looking at the repaired reactor through a window. "It will take months to fully rebuild," Eth said, "but it's safe now thanks to your work." "Thanks to everyone's work," corrected. "Your engineers were just as important as mine." "Perhaps, but you came first. You took the risk." Eth paused. "I want you to know something. I have sent a message to my emperor. I have recommended that the Empire and humanity establish formal relations, not as enemies, as partners." "Look surprised. Will he agree?" "I don't know, but I believe he will. What happened here cannot be ignored. 15,000 witnesses and human engineers working together. Your captain sacrificing himself for our children. These things matter. They change minds." "I hope you're right," said. "I'm tired of tension, tired of preparing for a war nobody really wants." "As am I," Eth agreed. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the activity in the colony below. Humans and moved through the streets together now, no longer separated by fear and suspicion. On the USS Valiant, Captain Carter opened his eyes. Everything hurt. His body felt like it was on fire, but he was alive. Somehow he was alive. Lisa Morgan was there instantly. "Captain, don't move. You're safe. You're on the Valiant." "The colony," Carter's voice came out as a whisper. "Safe. Everyone is safe. You did it, sir. You saved them all." Carter closed his eyes briefly. Relief flooded through him. "The crew." "All alive. Some radiation exposure, but everyone will recover. Says you're a stubborn fool for going down to that lower level." Carter managed a weak smile. "He's probably right. Admiral Eth has been asking about you. They want to honor you. The colony wants to name something after you. Earth Command is calling you a hero." "I'm not a hero," Carter said. "I just did my job." "Your job was to captain this ship. You went beyond that, way beyond." Morgan's voice was thick with emotion. "You scared me, sir. When your suit readings went critical, I thought." "I'm sorry," Carter said, "but I'd do it again. Those were people down there, children. How could I not try to save them?" Morgan smiled through her tears. "That's why you're the captain. That's why we follow you." A doctor entered the room. He looked surprised to see Carter awake. "Captain Carter, you should not be conscious yet. The radiation damage was severe." "How bad?" Carter asked. The doctor hesitated. "Serious. You will recover, but it will take time. 3 weeks had passed since the crisis at 7. The USS Valiant remained docked at the colony, undergoing repairs. The battle damage from Admiral Eth's pursuit, combined with the strain of pushing the engines beyond their limits, required extensive work. Human and engineers worked together on the repairs, sharing knowledge and building unexpected friendships. Captain Daniel Carter sat in his quarters, reviewing reports. His body still ached. The radiation treatment continued daily, and the doctors said he would carry the effects for the rest of his life. But he was alive. That was more than he had expected when he climbed down into that lower reactor level. A communication alert interrupted his reading. Lisa Morgan's face appeared on the screen. "Captain, we have an incoming transmission. It's from Emperor himself." Carter sat up. The Emperor put him through. The screen changed. Emperor appeared, seated on an elaborate throne. He looked old but dignified, his scales a pale silver that indicated great age among the. "Captain Carter," the Emperor said. His voice was deep and measured. "I have wanted to speak with you since I heard of your actions at 7. "Your Majesty," Carter replied, trying to sound formal despite his medical gown. "You violated our territory, you ignored our warnings, you refused to communicate with our forces." The Emperor paused. "And you saved 15,000 of my people, people I had failed to protect in time." "Your Majesty, I—" "Please let me finish." The Emperor raised a hand. "For 3 years I have viewed humanity as a threat, a rival to be watched and contained. I have prepared for war with your people. I have spent resources and lives maintaining a military stance against you. And then you did something that made all of that seem foolish." Carter waited. He wasn't sure where this was going. "You showed me that humanity possesses something more powerful than weapons," the Emperor continued. "Compassion, the willingness to sacrifice for strangers, the courage to do what is right even when it costs you everything." He leaned forward. "Captain, I am formally apologizing to you and your people. We fired upon a rescue mission. We nearly killed those who came to help us. That shame will be remembered in history. Your Majesty, Admiral Eth and his engineers helped us once they understood. Without them, we might have failed. This was a joint effort. Gracious even now, the Emperor said with something that might have been a smile. Captain, I am issuing a formal invitation. I want you to come to I want my people to meet the human who saved so many of us, and I want to discuss the future of relations between our peoples. Carter felt stunned. I'm honored, Your Majesty, but I should tell you Earth Command might not authorize. I have already spoken with your president. She has agreed. In fact, she seemed quite eager for improved relations. The Emperor's expression softened. Captain, we have wasted 3 years on fear and suspicion. Let us not waste any more time. Will you come? Carter thought about it for only a moment. Yes, Your Majesty, I will come. 2 weeks later, the USS Valiant approached but this time, she wasn't alone. A small fleet of human ships accompanied her, not as a show of force but as an honor guard. And surrounding them was an even larger fleet of vessels, also flying in honor formation. The sight was broadcast across both human and space. People watched in amazement as former enemies flew together, their ships perfectly coordinated. On the bridge, Lisa Morgan piloted the Valiant with careful precision. Captain Carter stood beside her, still recovering but insistent on being present. Brooks monitored the engines from his station, making sure everything ran smoothly. This is unreal, said quietly. A month ago, these guys were shooting at us. Now they're escorting us to there. Things change, Carter replied. Sometimes they change fast. Admiral Eth's voice came through the communication system. Captain Carter, welcome to Prime. The Emperor is eager to meet you, as are about 3 billion other people who want to thank you personally. Carter smiled. 3 billion might be too many for one meeting, Admiral. We'll try to keep it manageable, Eth replied with obvious amusement. The fleet entered orbit around Prime. The planet was beautiful with purple oceans and green land masses. Cities sparkled across the surface, connected by glowing transportation networks. It looked peaceful, prosperous, nothing like the hostile enemy world Carter had imagined during 3 years of tension. A shuttle arrived to transport Carter and a small delegation to the planet's surface. Morgan and a few other crew members accompanied him. They wore their dress uniforms, clean and pressed. It felt strange after weeks of work uniforms and radiation suits. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere. As they approached the capital city, Carter saw something extraordinary. Crowds lined the streets. Thousands, maybe millions of civilians had gathered. They held signs and banners. Many banners showed the Valiant's image. Others had words in both and English. Thank you and friends, not enemies. Look at that, Morgan whispered, staring out the window. They're here for us. The shuttle landed in a vast plaza in front of the Imperial Palace. The doors opened. Carter stepped out first, followed by his crew. The sound hit him like a wave. Cheering, applause, millions of voices raised together. The crowd roared its approval. Civilians waved at them, some crying with emotion. Emperor waited at the palace entrance, along with his advisors and Admiral Eth. As Carter approached, the Emperor stepped forward. Captain Daniel Carter, the Emperor said loudly, his voice amplified across the plaza. On behalf of the Empire and all its people, welcome. You come as a hero and a friend. Carter saluted. Your Majesty, I'm honored to be here. The Emperor returned the salute with a gesture of respect. Then he did something unexpected. He removed a medallion from around his neck and placed it around Carter's neck. This is the Star of Valor, the Emperor explained. Our highest honor. It has been awarded only 12 times in our history. You are the 13th recipient, and you are the first from outside our empire. Carter touched the medallion. It was heavy, made of some precious metal, with intricate designs carved into its surface. Your Majesty, I don't know what to say. Say you will help us build a better future. A future where our peoples work together instead of against each other. I will, Carter promised. The ceremony continued. Other crew members were honored, received an engineering commendation. Morgan received a medal for leadership. Each member of the rescue team was recognized. Then the Emperor led them into the palace. The Great Hall was filled with dignitaries, officials, and survivors from 7. Carter saw Administrator Al in the crowd. The old was smiling, tears running down his face. But what caught Carter's attention was a group of children standing near the front. Young, dressed in their best clothes. They held flowers and gifts. "These children," the Emperor said, "were in the shelters at 7. They survived because of you. I wanted you to meet them, to see the lives you saved." The children approached shyly. One by one they gave their gifts to the human crew members, flowers, drawings, small crafts they had made. Each child said thank you in careful English, words they had practiced. Carter knelt down to accept a gift from the smallest child, the same one who had given a flower at the colony. She handed him a drawing. It showed the USS Valiant as a bright star in the sky, protecting the colony below. "Thank you for saving us," the child said in a tiny voice. Carter felt tears in his eyes. He couldn't help it. "You're welcome. Stay safe, okay?" The child nodded and ran back to her parents. That evening, Carter sat with Admiral Eth on a balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting, casting orange and purple light across the buildings. Below, the streets were still crowded with celebrating people. "Your people seem happy," Carter observed. "They are. This is the first real hope they've had in years. The fear of war has weighed on everyone. Adults worried about their children's futures. Parents wondered if their sons and daughters would die in battles over territory that doesn't really matter." Eth sipped from a cup of something that smelled like tea. "You gave them hope that there's another way." "It wasn't just me," Carter said. "Your engineers worked just as hard. You made the decision to help instead of shooting us down. This was everyone's victory." "Perhaps," Eth looked at the sunset. "I have been a warrior my entire life. I believed strength came from weapons and ships and the willingness to fight, but you taught me something. True strength is knowing when not to fight, knowing when to help instead of hurt." "My father told me something once," Carter said. "He said the real test of character isn't how you treat your friends, it's how you treat people who can't help you, or even people who are against you." "Wise words." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Eth spoke again. "The Emperor has asked me to lead a joint task force, human and ships working together to respond to emergencies, rescue missions, disaster relief, medical aid. He wants to make what happened at 7 official policy." Carter smiled. "That's wonderful. Who's going to command the human side?" Eth looked at him meaningfully. "Oh," Carter said. "Oh, I see. Your government has agreed, if you're willing. The USS Valiant would be the flagship. We would add ships to your fleet. You and I would command together." Carter thought about it. It meant more time away from Earth, more danger, more responsibility. But it also meant saving lives, building bridges, turning enemies into friends. "I accept," Carter said. 6 months later, the joint fleet responded to its first emergency. A space station in neutral territory had suffered a life support failure. The combined human force arrived within hours, saving all 2,000 inhabitants. News of the rescue spread quickly. Other species took notice. The collective, a powerful federation that had remained neutral during the human tensions, sent a message. They wanted to join the rescue initiative. They offered ships and resources. Within a year, the Joint Task Force had expanded to include 6 different species. They responded to disasters across the galaxy, asking nothing in return. They simply helped because help was needed. On the first anniversary of the 7 rescue, a memorial was built at the colony. It showed human and figures working together, their hands joined. The inscription was written in both languages. On this day, enemies became friends, fear became hope, and the galaxy learned that the greatest strength is compassion. Captain Daniel Carter stood at the memorial with Admiral Eth. They had become true friends over the past year. They had saved hundreds of lives together. They had proven that cooperation was stronger than conflict. "Do you ever regret it?" Eth asked. "Crossing into our territory that day, you almost died. You carry permanent scars from the radiation." Carter touched the Star of Valor, which he wore always. "Never, not for a second. Those scars remind me that I did something that mattered, that I saved people who needed saving. What could be better than that?" "Nothing," Eth agreed. "Nothing at all." They watched as children from the colony played near the memorial. Human and children playing together without fear or hatred. They had grown up knowing that the two species were friends. They couldn't imagine a time when things were different. This was the future. Not the old future of tension and war, but a new future built on courage and compassion. A future where a lone battleship crossing enemy lines meant rescue instead of attack, where different species worked together instead of against each other. The USS Valiant orbited overhead, her hull still bearing the scars from that desperate race to save lives. But those scars were badges of honor now. They told a story. A story of the day when humanity showed the galaxy what it truly meant to be strong. Not through weapons, not through conquest, but through the simple, powerful choice to save lives, even enemy lives, even when it cost everything. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, and it changed everything. Admiral Eth raised his cup in a toast. To Captain Daniel Carter and the crew of the USS Valiant, who showed us all that the measure of a civilization is not how fiercely they can fight, but how selflessly they can sacrifice for others. Carter raised his own cup. To peace, to friendship, to the day when crossing into enemy territory means bringing help instead of war. They drank together, human and former enemies now bound by respect and shared purpose. And overhead, among the stars, the combined fleet flew patrol. Ships from a dozen species, working together to protect the innocent and save the endangered. They were the legacy of one bold decision, one desperate rescue mission, one captain who chose compassion over caution. The galaxy was changing, and it was changing for the better. Far away on Earth, President Martinez gave a speech at the Fleet Academy. She spoke about Captain Carter and the crew of the Valiant. She spoke about courage and sacrifice, and she ended with words that would become the new motto of the human space fleet. We are strongest not when we fight, but when we save. Not when we conquer, but when we protect. Not when we take, but when we give. That is the human way. That is our promise to the galaxy. The cadets cheered. They understood. They had grown up with stories of the Valiant's mission. They dreamed of being like Captain Carter, of making the hard choices that saved lives instead of taking them. This was humanity's future, not as warriors, not as conquerors, but as protectors, as friends, as the people who would cross into enemy territory not to attack, but to save. And the galaxy was better for it. Months of treatment, some damage may be permanent, he paused, but you will live, against all probability you will live. Carter nodded. That was good enough. He had lived and 15,000 others had lived too. That was all that mattered. Outside, in the cold darkness of space, human and ships floated side by side. Not as enemies, not yet as allies, but as something new, something better. Two peoples who had learned that saving lives was more important than old grudges. And far away, on dozens of worlds in both human and space, people watched the news reports. They saw the images of humans and working together. They heard the stories of courage and sacrifice. They began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the time for war was ending. The time for friendship was beginning. Heat control rods were fully inserted, the coolant flowed normally, the containment was sealed, the reactor was stable. Emerged last, exhausted and shaking. He saw Captain Carter lying on a medical gurney, unconscious. Tears ran down his face. We did it, said to no one in particular. We saved them, all 15,000. Administrator Al approached. The old was crying too. Thank you, he said simply. Thank you for saving my people. Around them, civilians emerged from the shelters. They saw the human engineers covered in sweat and contamination. They saw their own engineers standing beside them. They saw Admiral Eth, the great warrior, watching over the human captain who had sacrificed himself. And they understood that something fundamental had changed. The old hatred seemed smaller somehow, less important. What mattered was the people who had risked everything to save them. On the Valiant's bridge, everyone turned to look at Captain Carter. He sat in his chair, exhausted but relieved. Open a channel. Morgan activated the communication system. Carter spoke clearly. Admiral Eth, this is Captain Daniel Carter. We accept your escort, but we need to hurry. How much time does the colony have? Eth's voice came back grim. Less than an hour, perhaps less. Can you save them? Carter looked at his crew. They looked back at him with determination. We're going to try. Eth clenched his fists. What were the humans planning? This made no sense. One ship couldn't conquer anything. One ship couldn't even survive against his fleet. So why? Alert all ships, Eth ordered. When we intercept, we disable that vessel. Do not destroy it. I want to know what the humans are doing. His officers acknowledged the order. Eth watched the human ship on his screen. In 3 years of tension, he had studied humanity. He knew they were dangerous. He knew they were clever. But he also knew they valued their people. They protected their ships and crews carefully. This mission went against everything he knew about humans. That worried him more than anything else. The chase continued. Human and ships raced through space, heading toward a confrontation that could start a war. And ahead of them all, on a small mining colony, 15,000 civilians waited for rescue that they didn't know was coming.